Hey, Clemson family, here comes the toughest game of the season for the Tigers so far as NC State comes into Death Valley looking for a second straight win against the good guys in orange. And just to show the matchup's importance, ESPN's College Game Day plans to be on Bowman Field Saturday morning as well.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Another way we can tell how big this matchup is today's guest, Matt Conley from On3. I want to talk about the wide receivers and how they stepped up last week and how much more they're going to have to step up this week.
I'm Bill Zimmerman. Welcome to episode 28 of the Reign Supreme Alway podcast. Thanks for finding us on all the major podcast apps. Also at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff, where we get a lot of listeners, and you can find us on our homepage at ClemsonKickoff.com. Well, first, let's get into this big matchup. And Daniel, I know you want to get started talking about Clemson's wide receivers and the role they've been playing and how effective or rocky at other times the Clemson offense has been so far this year.
You know, a lot of the talk this year about this offense has been about DJ Uiagalelei, and that's fine. I get that. I get why we do that. It's the quarterback. It's the most important position in football and probably in all of sports. But it's an 11-person game out there for the offense, and one guy can't do it all by himself. And we've seen that this year. When this offense has struggled, the wide receivers have not made plays. And, I mean, there's other reasons too. DJ's not perfect for sure. But when this offense has struggled, the wide receivers have struggled. And we saw this past Saturday. How many times did we see against Wake Forest where these receivers made plays for their quarterback? And they're good throws, but the receivers had to win a contested play. We saw it with Antonio Williams on the fade when he's in the slot down to the sideline. We saw it with Jake Brennanstool on the first touchdown. We saw it with Joe Ngata on the real deep ball down the left sideline. We saw it with Bo Collins on the touchdown in overtime and Davis Allen on the touchdown in overtime. Bo Collins had another one earlier in the game. So there's 6 or 7 balls where the receivers made plays. Those are 6 or 7 completions where the first few games they might have been 3 completions or 2 completions. But they really stepped up on Saturday, and hopefully they can continue to step up against a much better defense in NC State.
It was definitely noticeable how well they were playing. There was a lot made out of Wake Forest missing several defensive backs, but I'll tell you what, they were pretty decent in coverage much of the game. So the receivers, I think, were tested a little bit. I think they did get to show their potential. You would think that the guys that Wake Forest had back there would be of the highest caliber talent, at least recruiting-wise, of the 4 teams that they played so far this year. Should be interesting, though. The windows could get a little bit tighter with NC State's defensive backs. DJ Uiagalelei may need to pay a little more attention to where guys are going to be. Receivers may have to work a little harder to gain separation. Definitely be something to keep an eye on during this game between the Tigers and the Wolfpack. And you would think more than likely the path to an ACC Atlantic Division Championship goes through this game, and then when the winner of this game faces Florida State.
It should. Look, I think the Atlantic Division's really good. There's 4 undefeated teams left in the conference. They're all in the Atlantic Division. And I know we don't talk about those kinds of things nationally, that this division or the Coastal is any good. This because the ACC doesn't get that respect. But if you look at this league right now and that division in particular, Clemson's really good. I think Wake Forest is really good, Bill. I know that Clemson won Saturday and it was a shootout and all those things. And Wake Forest defense wasn't great and was banged up and shorthanded. But that offense is really good. And that coaching staff is one of the best in the country. I know it's Wake Forest, but that's true. NC State, really talented, very good defensively, pretty good quarterback. That's a really talented team. And then Florida State has really stepped up this year and is much improved over what it has been throughout the past, decade almost. So I like what I see from Florida State. We'll see how they continue to grow and when they play some of these tougher teams in the division. But this is a tough division, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Clemson got through the first hurdle in the division. Now the next one is coming up with NC State.
Florida State on the Clemson schedule 2 weeks from now after the Boston College game. But this week against NC State, one thing I want to be looking for is, will Clemson have a more wide open playbook? And I feel like the answer is probably not, because how many times in recent years have we thought, oh, well, they're hanging on to something. They're trying to keep it basic. They're trying to keep it vanilla. They don't want to show all their cards. And then you get through the whole season and nothing new really shows up on the field as far as play calling. You have to wonder if Dabo Swinney, Brandon Streeter have something else up their sleeves. I think they open things up a little bit against Louisiana Tech. I think they open things up a little bit more against Wake Forest. The question is really going to be whether or not they can get those passing lanes open. A few tip balls last week that if there's better blocking up front as far as directional blocking, those passes maybe get completed. Certainly, though, it was super encouraging to see how much time they were providing DJ Uyunglele. So hopefully, if the coaching staff does want to open up the playbook a little bit, everybody's going to be in a position where they're capable of executing a little new wrinkle or a new look.
I like the cards they played Saturday. We'll see if they have better cards than what we saw on Saturday. They may have something special going on this season. And we'll see. Again, like you said, every game is different. Dabo Swinney said that today in his news conference, that each game is its own season. And you try to win that game and you do everything you can. And then the Sunday after, you focus on the next one. And that's what they did last week. It was an offensive shootout. The defense was a struggle, which we talked about first episode of this week, but the offense stepped up. Bill, I'll tell you what, the offensive line looks much better. Now, the running game is still a bit of a struggle, especially on the inside, but their pass protection has been tremendously improved over what it was last year. It's not even close. Last year, it seemed like as soon as DJ put that back foot in the ground, he had people in his face or people around his legs. This year, not so much. And how many times did we see Saturday where he could scan the field and go to his third or fourth option? We saw it a lot. And that's a huge improvement over what we saw last year. Now, again, NC State, much tougher test, very good up front on defense, and they're going to bring something different than what Wake Forest did. But I like what we saw from the offensive line on Saturday. And they kept mentioning this during the broadcast. Last year, they had 7 different starting offensive lines during the season. And never did they have the same offensive line start 4 straight games. Well, they've done that this year. And now we're going into game 5. So it feels like this group is really coming together.
Be sure to follow us on your favorite podcast app or subscribe to us at youtube.com/Clemson Kickoff. We'll keep you posted all the time when news is happening around Clemson sports.
Now we're joined by Matt Conley from On3. Matt, how you doing today?
Doing great. Yeah, thank y'all for having me. Looking forward to this week's game.
We appreciate you being back on. You saw the Wake Forest game last week. What did you see improvement-wise from that game for the team, and then maybe what can carry over into this NC State game?
I think the biggest thing improvement-wise, it's just the way the game unfolded, was just the play of DJ Uyunglele, how accurate he was with the football, the way Clemson protected him up front. I think for the most part, they did a good job of keeping him upright, not letting him get hit. But really just his accuracy, man. I mean, there were some great throws that he made where he sent balls into small windows. There was pretty good coverage at time. Even the throw in double overtime to Davis Allen, where he's got the defender kind of right there running with Davis Allen. There's a safety coming over to try to help. And he throws it back shoulder where only Davis can get it. He goes up and makes what ends up being the game-winning catch. So I think really just the play of DJ, some of those throws that he made that we really haven't seen him consistently make so far in his career. There were still some throws where, maybe he has a guy open and he misses them, or he's rolling left and kind of can't get his shoulder square and, misses his target there. But just, maybe too many throws where he kind of missed still that, you would like to see him make. But at the same time, he made some throws that were just incredible that only a few quarterbacks, I think, in the country can make.
But, Matt, it gets tougher this week, right, against NC State. I mean, he maybe even have to play better against the Wolfpack than he did last week.
Yeah, I mean, this defense is a whole nother level from what Clemson just saw. Wake Forest, it's probably a pretty average defense that was also missing its best cornerback, that was probably pretty undersized up front. So they had to do a lot of things to try to stop the run game. I think they were selling out a lot to just try to stop the run game. And so DJ had, a lot of one-on-one looks, whether it be to Joseph Ngata or Bo Collins, or even his tight ends, like we mentioned a little bit with Davis Allen and Jake Brenningstool. So, in that game, yeah, he made some great throws, but it's going to be different this week as far as the looks he gets. I think NC State will play a lot more zone. They'll try to keep things in front of them. I don't think they'll have to sell out as much to stop the run. They've got a better secondary. They've got maybe the best group of linebackers in the country. So, definitely a much bigger challenge this week than what Clemson saw last week in Wake Forest.
Matt, is last year's game against NC State, is that motivation for Clemson this year after losing up there in double overtime?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. They're trying to kind of say the right things this week and kind of say it's just another game. But I think it was Will Shipley who came out earlier this week and said, yeah, we're going to say that, but there's a little more juice here to this one. I think some of it is losing to NC State last year and kind of the way that game unfolded. I think some of it, too, is, Clemson's right there getting past Wake Forest and kind of seeing how the schedule is shaping up. And, you've got Notre Dame now that doesn't look as tough as maybe it did in the preseason. I mean, I think Clemson's got a real shot to get back to the playoff and, make a run here and win an ACC title. So, whoever wins this game is going to be in a good spot as far as trying to win the ACC Atlantic, trying to win the league overall, and then get back to the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, I think definitely there's a lot of motivation going into this game. There's a lot of reasons why Clemson will be up. I mean, it's a night game, different scoreboard now, different environment, different lights, all that kind of stuff. So that part will have everyone juiced up too. But just also the way last year's game went for sure, losing in double overtime, losing a heartbreaker. Yeah, I think that's definitely something that these players still remember.
What about the injuries? Have you heard what's the latest with guys playing, not playing, any of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They were pretty quiet this week on everyone other than Trey Williams and saying Trey Williams will be back. I think they're hoping to get Andrew Makuba back. They're hoping Malcolm Green will play. They're hoping Sheridan Jones will play. XT probably still sounds not great. I mean, he kind of came out earlier this week and said, look, there's still some pain with my foot where I can't go and play 100% and I don't feel 100%. And, I'm not going to go out there and play with pain and try to play through that. I think that's not good for his future to try to do that. I don't think it's probably good for Clemson for him to go out there less than 100%, try to make plays. So I would be surprised if he plays. Those other guys, it's really tough to say. I mean, I think with Makuba, with him dislocating his elbow, Dabo said, they're going to try to brace it up and he'll try to go out there and play. And I just don't know how effective you can be if you have one arm in a brace, trying to tackle, trying to make plays on the ball. I know Landon Zander said a couple of years ago, just when he had his shoulder injury and he really only had one arm he could use, that it was pretty impossible to try to play defense. So, if Makuba does play, how effective will he be, I think is a fair question. Sheridan Jones has had a couple of stingers now through the first 3 weeks. I asked Dabo earlier this week if there's some concern with that as far as long-term. And he kind of said, yeah, there's always some long-term concern when you're talking about stingers. But at the same time, they're hoping he'll be able to play. So, we'll see. I think it's probably a little too early in the week to know for sure. And Dabo's definitely trying to keep that pretty quiet this week. The only guy we know for sure that'll be back is Trey Williams.
Matt, I saw a stat from CFB Nerds, which is a great follow on Twitter and a fun show to listen to and to watch. North Carolina State's passing attack has been either the worst or the second worst that each of its 4 opponents have faced so far this year, which was really surprising to me because Devin Leary is such a talent and such a pro prospect. Have you been able to pick up on anything that Clemson might be able to benefit from as far as the underachieving of NC State passing game? And maybe are they holding something back for this week, knowing Dave Doran sees such a rivalry here?
Yeah, I think both of those are good points. I'll start first with just why they haven't maybe been as good as people thought. I think it's kind of, we talked about this as being a big step up for the Clemson offense and kind of facing, a much tougher challenge. It'll be a step back for the Clemson defense, I think, just as far as the deep shots that Wake Forest was able to take, the playmakers they have at receiver, the Donovan Green and A.T. Perry. There's not really a guy like that on NC State's team. So it'll be a much different game. I think it'll be more quick game for NC State. Demi, I'm not going to try to say his last name, the running back for NC State number 0. I think they'll try to get him the ball a lot just because he's a very explosive player. And so, I think it'll maybe be some screens to him, some handoffs to him. But, yeah, I don't think NC State will be able to exploit the Clemson secondary in the way that Wake Forest was able to. As far as if they're holding some stuff back, that's interesting. And it's something I kind of have been listening to some NC State people this week, media personalities up there. That's something they've kind of hinted at is maybe Dave Doran's kind of holding some things back and been saving some things for this week and for this game. So it's dangerous to do that. Obviously, they got to 4-0. If they were able to do that, they got to 4-0 without having to use some stuff. But it's not like they came out and just dominated everyone either. That ECU game to open the year was close right to the wire. So, maybe it's dangerous to do that, but it could end up paying off this weekend if they're able to have some stuff saved that they've kind of been waiting to show Clemson.
Daniel and I also talked about in recent years with the Clemson offense, you look at it and you're like, oh, they're saving something for this game or that game. And then you get through the whole season, you haven't really seen anything emerge, right? Save for maybe that 2-back set last year that sort of came of necessity to keep some linebackers maybe on their heels a little easier. Do you think there's anything that Clemson has shown against Louisiana Tech, against Wake Forest, that they could build on and, like I put it with Daniel, not reinvent the wheel, but maybe have some kind of wrinkle, some kind of different look?
Yeah, they definitely do. And, asking Brandon Streeter after the Louisiana Tech game, I asked him about kind of that and if they were saving some stuff. And he basically came out and said, yeah, we have a lot of maybe things where we show something and then we have like a wrinkle off of it. He's obviously not going to give that away and kind of tell what it is, but maybe you run a screen to one side and then later in the year you fake a screen to that side and run one to the other side or something, just stuff like that. Little wrinkles that they save, kind of counters to use off different formations, different plays. So there's definitely some stuff Clemson saved too. But yeah, it's funny you said that because, you growing up and you're watching football and you're rooting for me, in my case, I'm watching Purdue and root for them. And kind of early in the year, it's, oh man, they're not showing anything. They're saving it for the big games. And then you get to the big games and it's like, oh, none of this worked. Or if they were saving something, it did not go great. So I think that's kind of just a football fan thing to do. Is kind of gives you some hope that, oh yeah, they're just saving stuff. Just wait till next week. Wait till they need it. Like I said, I do think probably both of them would be at all surprised if they have a little something up their sleeve this week.
You and Daniel and I were texting about a week ago at this point, I guess, about maybe having to throw some cold water on the Clemson offense, but that was before 51 points at Wake Forest, admittedly some of that in double overtime. Are the concerns as great now as they seem to be coming out of that Louisiana Tech game and now those first 3 games in general?
I don't want to say there's no concerns with the offense, but there aren't a ton of concerns with the offense. I mean, I do think that I have a lot more confidence after the Wake Forest game than I did going into it, just because, like I said, DJ was just throwing some passes that are elite throws that a few quarterbacks in college football are making. If you look at the advanced stats, and, I know Dabo's been kind of saying people wrote DJ off and were unfair to him and some of this kind of stuff. But if you look at the advanced stats last year, just as far as his accurate throws and stuff, he was really, really bad. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. He wasn't very accurate. He wasn't a very accurate quarterback last year. And some of that was receivers picked up, sure, but there were just a lot of throws that he missed. And when you look at the advanced stats this year, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this country. And, he's been accurate with the football. He's made good decisions. He's protected the football. So, I am buying into the hype with DJ at this point. I just think we've seen enough to say that he's a different quarterback. Now, is he going to go out and play flawless and play a great game? And is Clemson going to score 40-plus points every week? Probably not. But I do think we've seen enough to say, hey, he's much improved. I will say, I'll add, just talking about DJ, I mean, I do think that this is just another big game for him nationally from that perspective. And that, I went on a national show earlier today and was talking with some people about the game and kind of previewing the game. And, they said they kind of pointed or asked the question this way, in that, we have one game of DJ being a really good quarterback against Wake Forest, and we have a lot of games last year proof that he's not that good, and when he plays, Power 5 decent defenses. So they were kind of saying, hey, I need to see a lot more before I'm just ready to buy into DJ and believe in him. So I think that there's definitely some people nationally that still have a lot of questions about DJ and have a lot of questions about this offense and how good he is and how good it really is. So definitely a big opportunity this week against a really good NC State defense to kind of show what he can do.
And the windows could get tighter, not just because of NC State having more talent in the back 7, but also if they can stop the Clemson running game the way that Wake Forest was able to bottle it up after that initial 50-plus yard gain out of Will Shipley, could have that ripple effect. If they can't run the ball and if they can drop into coverage, things get even tougher still for Uiagalelei and those receivers.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you could kind of just see Wake Forest wasn't going to let Clemson win the game on the ground after that first run. And so, they're loading the box on the RPOs. They're biting up. And you just had a lot of one-on-one matchups behind it where you're running a slant behind an RPO and the linebackers have a bit up, or you're running a post, or you're running a fade route. And it's just one-on-one coverage because the safeties are coming down to try to help in the run game. So definitely I think NC State, their game plan is try to slow down the run without having to use the safeties, without having to have a ton of guys in the box and trying to just go all out on the run. Having that safety help over the top, making those windows tighter, playing more zone and trying to give DJ different looks and not just giving them open areas. And, I mean, this NC State defense is legit. It's a really, really good defense. They play their assignments well. They get after the quarterback. They're good against the run. They've got one of the best linebacker groups in the country. It's a legit defense that is probably right there with Clemson. It's definitely played better than Clemson has so far this year, just mainly because of the way the secondaries have played. But it's a legit defense, and it'll be a big test for DJ.
Appreciate you taking some time today. I know it's been a busy day for you. And you guys have that $10 for a year deal back at clemsonsports.com, did I see?
Yeah. I pitched and got that back for us for this week, big week with NC State coming to town. So, yeah, we've got that going on through the week. Encourage people to sign up, have the film review coming out. If it's not already out, it'll be out shortly. So it's a cool piece where we kind of go back and look at highlight some plays with some input from the coaches. So got that coming out, prediction, preview for the game, all that kind of stuff as well. So encourage people to come sign up. Like you said, $10 for a year.
That's the deal that got me started when you guys launched a couple of years ago, and I definitely enjoy those film review posts. So I'm looking forward to seeing that this week again. So, Matt, thanks very much. Matt Connolly, ClemsonSports.com, part of the On3 network.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
Be sure to follow our new Instagram channel at Clemson Kickoff. We're having some fun with that. And also follow us on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. Of course, Matt's account is one of the ones we'll retweet when news breaks, and several others. Plus, we'll offer our own analysis as well in real time. You talk about that Clemson defense. When the Wolfpack do have the ball Saturday, if that is indeed when they're able to play the game, something's going to have to change for the Tigers under Wes Goodwin and Mickey Kahn to make this thing work better than it did last week, without a doubt.
For sure. I mean, look, the defense, that's one of the worst performances we've seen from a Clemson defense in a long time. Maybe the Ohio State game a couple of years ago in the playoff where they just could not stop Justin Fields and the Buckeyes in that game. But we haven't seen many like that in a decade. I mean, it's been since really the Kevin Steele defense that we've seen Clemson defense lit up like that, where they just looked like they had no answers. So we'll see. Now, are they going to be healthy? That's going to be a big part of this. Where are they going to be in the secondary with all those guys who didn't play last week? That's going to be a key. But I also feel like NC State's not nearly as dynamic and electric on offense. So maybe that will help the Clemson defense settle in a little bit as well. So that'll be a big part of what happens on Saturday night.
Tigers have to hope for a lot of starters to be back in that lineup who've been injured in recent weeks. Tyler Davis sure made an impact by returning last week. So we'll see who all can make it onto the field against NC State. One good thing that they do have working in their favor, perhaps, unless NC State's holding something back that they're going to show, is that they have been surprisingly bad in passing offense. And that's despite having a heck of a quarterback in Devin Leary, who I'd say is on at least a par with Sam Hartman. And some people last year felt he was on a par with Kenny Pickett, first-round pick in the NFL draft out of Pitt. But NC State has struggled to the extent that of the 4 opponents that they have played this year, NC State's passing attack has been either the worst or the second worst against all 4 of those teams in their games so far this year. I don't think any of us saw that coming, but with so many skill position players having to be replaced coming into this year, plus offensive line, they had a left tackle taken in the first round of the NFL draft. A lot of people having been replaced on that offensive attack and settling into new roles. So that could end up creating some good matchups for the Tigers, perhaps.
You would hope so. I'm surprised by that stat that you gave me. I knew that they had not been as good as maybe we thought they were going to be passing the ball going into this season. But when you told me that, I was like, wow, how is that even possible with a young man? Like you said, a lot of people think Devin Leary is an NFL quarterback. But, Bill, we saw that with Clemson last year. If your quarterback is surrounded by guys who aren't getting the job done, it makes it almost impossible for the quarterback to get the job done. And DJ battled things on his own last year, but he needed help last year and didn't get it. And now he's getting it, and we're seeing how much better he's playing. So, hopefully Clemson's defense can get after Devin Leary on Saturday, maybe shut down the running game, make NC State one-dimensional, and then really let that defensive line do its job.
What are the odds, getting back to when Clemson has the ball, that there's something in the playbook that just hasn't been shown yet, that has been saved for this game? Do you think there's any shot that we're going to see, I'm not saying reinvent the wheel, but some things that just haven't been out there? Or do you lean toward kind of like I do, we say that all the time and it never happens?
Well, there could be. I mean, we saw a couple of plays last week that they haven't run all year. the little play action and then drop the pass off to Davis Allen in the flat. They haven't run that all year. I've been waiting for them to run that all year, and they finally did. I'd love to see some jet sweeps. Get Antonio Williams the ball coming off the end and give him the ball and see if you can get some blockers out there for him. Bill, I would love to see the 2-back set, which was so effective at the end of last year. We haven't seen that much this year. So we've seen it a couple times, but not a lot. So I think there's still more in the playbook. But I also like the fact that we've heard these coaches talk about, in the past couple of years, maybe they practiced a bunch of stuff and they didn't do it in the games and they were overloading some things. I like that they've simplified some things and do those things better moving forward. But I do believe there are a couple of little wrinkles that maybe we haven't seen yet.
2-back set is the thing I've been wondering about. I do think it's effective. Uiagalelei is running the ball better this year. He's got 2 good knees as opposed to last year. He can sort of keep defenses accountable. And I think when they went to the 2-back set last year, it was simply because A, Uiagalelei wasn't very healthy to run the ball. And 2, if he went down, they really didn't have a top quality backup. I think they feel better about Cade Klubnik this year, so they're more willing to run Uiagalelei in those situations, much more like they have with previous Clemson quarterbacks. He's certainly not fleet of foot like Kelly Bryant. He's more muscular like Taj Boyd. I enjoy seeing him carry the ball, though, and he seems to be getting a little more comfortable doing it, looking a little more natural when he does. But if they were to come out, say, in the third quarter and throw some 2-back out there, and sort of catch NC State off guard with that, and then use play action out of that to get some receivers open, that could be really interesting to see. So certainly the potential for some new things. I just certainly feel short of a necessity, they probably are pretty unlikely to do a whole lot different. It was also cool to see some orbit motion from Antonio Williams. I don't know what they could dial up out of that. It's not typically a running play that comes out of orbit motion, but perhaps they start to use some of that to get defenses thinking he'll be in orbit, then he goes in motion closer to line. They do get that kind of jet sweep look out of him. I just don't know passing-wise what they would do. I was surprised to see them use the left side of the field more. There's been a lot of diagrams out there on Twitter. I know one was from Morgan Thomas' show documenting that DJ hadn't been throwing much to the left side of the field. They definitely designed more passes to get him to look at the left side of the field. Question is, will they have more of that, or was that designed to make NC State prepare to defend both sides of the field? By the way, the stat about NC State's passing attack being slow came from CFB Nerds. Great account, great follow. So we don't pretend to be the only game in town. Want to give credit when we see those things and give you a chance to watch their shows as well or to hear their podcasts.
Look, I think there's a lot out there for this offense still. There's still some plays to be made. There's still a lot they've got to clean up. But I like what this coaching staff has done. I do. I know that everybody wants to bang on Brandon Streeter, and it's, now it's his job and he's in that seat. But I think he's done a fairly good job so far. They're scoring a lot of points and they've been way more efficient. That third down performance on Saturday, I've never seen anything like it before, Bill. I mean, they were so good on third down. 16 converted third downs in one game. I don't think Clemson's ever done that before. So to see that happen, to see how efficient they are in the red zone now has really been impressive. And I like what I'm seeing from this coaching staff.
And of course, the flip side of that is really they had to convert that many third downs. And I think some people who don't understand how good Wake Forest has been in recent years sort of saw that as like, well, that's a failure to be in that position. But honestly, it was good to see. And it was also good to see that some of the play calling wasn't as predictable, maybe, not only to the fans and to the announcers in the booth, but I don't think the Wake Forest defense really had a feel for what was going to happen. And sometimes last year, or even sometimes in that first couple of games this year, you could just tell the defense was lined up in the right spot before the snap, executed well, weren't fooled by what came at them. So if we can get more of that out there from the Tigers, that could also carry them through this game, which again, could be the biggest game of the year. Maybe Florida State ends up looking better by then. A lot of respect for what Florida State has done this season under Mike Norvell. But as of now, I would have to think NC State is the primary game on this schedule. And I don't think any of us thought that. I think most people figured it'd be Notre Dame and Miami in November rather than this game here. Obviously, this game was going to have more importance all along to the division standings. And now we definitely have to look at Florida State and maybe even Syracuse as being important for that as well. But I think talent-wise, one-on-one, and then coaching-wise and players comfortable in their system, this might be it.
It feels like it. I think NC State is the biggest challenge left on the schedule. And no disrespect for those other schools. I mean, those teams are good. And we've seen Florida State step up. We've seen Syracuse. I mean, the wins that Syracuse had over Purdue and Virginia, where they had to scratch and claw and do everything they could to win those games, they wouldn't have done that the last 3 or 4 years. So those teams are really improved. But talent-wise, I don't think they're as good as NC State. Coaching-wise, I think Doran is a really good coach. And his staff, he's got a terrific staff put together. They've really stepped up since that East Carolina game where it looked like they should have lost that game. And they're a top 10 team for a reason, and we're going to see why Saturday night.
Well, if anything changes regarding kickoff or game day or whatever it might be, we will be sure to keep you posted on Twitter. If it's really, really big news, we might do a YouTube short. You could catch up on what we're doing there. We're also on Instagram now at Clemson Kickoff, and we could do a short video there as well to keep you guys posted in between. Daniel, anything else going on this week that you're going to be keeping an eye out for?
I guess it's all about the weather right now, right? If we can get to Saturday and game day is going to be on campus, I think that's exciting. That always adds a lot of fun. But hopefully we can get this game played Saturday night in front of a full Death Valley. I can't wait to see the environment Saturday night if this game is played on time and we have a full house.
Well, I hope everyone has enjoyed this episode. We are glad you found us, Clemson family. Go ahead and smash that subscribe button or that follow button. We'll keep you up to speed every time we react to big news that's happening around Clemson athletics. It's an easy way to help keep this a free podcast as well. Our homepage has great resources, www.clemsonkickoff.com. All our episodes are there. You can go back, listen to the archives. You can find links to all the major podcast apps as well. Give us a follow on Twitter at Clemson Kickoff. We retweet news there as it happens. We give quick hit opinions in real time. And we post some show clips and maybe some other new things coming up too on our Instagram account that just launched at Clemson Kickoff as well. Well, until the next episode, I'm Bill Zimmerman.
I'm Daniel Shirley. Go Tigers.
Which has been surprising with Dennis Leary being such...
Whoa. You said Dennis Leary.
Yes, I did.
I knew one of us was going to do it.
Got the Von Bondi stuck in my head.
Oh, nice.